Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our special lunchtime lecture, the Independence Edition. I would like to welcome you to the Democratic Labour Party headquarters, and to those online, we'd also like to welcome you to this lecture. I want to start by saying thank you for joining us, and it is a real pleasure for me to introduce the speaker for this evening. Often, as president of the party, I've come to realize, and as leader of the party, that my roles vary from mourner in chief, celebratory in chief, counselor in chief, bridge in chief. There are many roles as a party leader you face. Uniter in chief, hugger in chief, shoulder to cry on in chief, and often sometimes the joyous moments are misplaced, or sometimes we do not acknowledge them. And today is a real joy to introduce someone and who I think has one of the finest minds in Barbados, and not just to tourism. And I think Dr. Kerry Hall is a brilliant daughter of the soil. And often we do not celebrate people in their presence. And everyone knows me, I make a habit now of celebrating people in their presence, because it is something we need a little bit more of in our country, a little bit of kindness and a little bit of how to honor and respect and cheer each other on. I take real pleasure and a single honor in doing this particular task today to introduce Dr. Hall. Dr. Hall is a double graduate from University in the West Indies with a honors degree in management studies and a PhD in tourism history. She also holds a master's in hotel and food service management from the Florida International University. Dr. Hall has had many roles in tourism: Chief Tourism Development Officer in the Ministry of Tourism. She's been a trade consultant and a tourism and entertainment services consultant. She has been a director of people development and training at Sandy Lane Hotel. She's written many papers, white paper on development of tourism in Barbados from 2012 to 2022. She has been chairperson of the Tourism Advisory Council. She has helped to develop the Grenada Strategic Plan on Tourism, and I can go on and on. There seems to be nothing in tourism that Dr. Hall has not been able to do or has not done with style and with class, and above all, with a sense of intelligence and duty to the countries that she has served in the Caribbean. I want to now introduce today's speaker for the lunchtime lecture, our own daughter of the soil, Dr. Kerry Hall.
Good day, everyone. Thank you so much, Mr. President. I never recognize my own self there. You know, when you hear people talking about you in such glowing terms, I would like to thank you so much. Good day, everyone. I'm so happy to be here today to have this discussion with you. I'm a bit of a roving tourism ambassador, where I try to accept all of the invitations that I get and to speak to the issue of tourism, because I believe that this is an area we don't talk about enough. We don't talk about tourism in a way that it is participatory, is inclusive, that we involve our people in the decision-making process. And we have to do that now more so than ever before, based on what would have transpired over the last 2 years. If there's anybody that doubted that our fortunes were inextricably linked to the tourism industry, the rise or the fall of the tourism industry, I think what happened in the last 2 years has driven that home more so than ever before. And we just can't go back to business as usual. We need to be able to do tourism differently and build the industry back a lot better, safer, greener, smarter than we've done before we had COVID. And I didn't necessarily come here today since I want to take advantage of a forum such as this, where I want to hear from you, the average person, but I also want to have a two-way discussion where I fulfill my mandate of giving a lecture on the reinvention of the tourism industry, the 21st century imperative, but I just want to roll the wicket a little bit and give a little groundwork so that you in the audience and even the audience on the World Wide Web could be involved and we could ask questions, suggestions, etc. as we go on. Now, there are just a couple of questions I want to pose to get the whole, to roll the wicket, so to speak, of what is to come. And as we go forward and we start the process of reinventing the tourism industry, and as we emerge on the global stage with a reimagined, innovative, renewed tourism architecture, I think there's some pertinent questions we need to be asking ourselves because these are the areas that we need to be focusing on as we go forward. First question is, what is the plan for tourism? Coming out of the last 2 years, which has been a very traumatic, nightmarish type of scenario that we had to endure when tourism collapsed, the Barbados economy collapsed right after tourism. And we're being told that, which we already know, that the tourism industry, the economy will only see recovery and it will be determined by the successful recovery of the tourism industry. So there's a lot hinging on the successful recovery of this sector. So what is the plan going forward for the sector? As I said, it can't be business as usual. We can't just come out of the industry like how we went in. The second question is the current Sansi and Sun model that we've run our tourism industry on for the last, if I'm going to be very honest, over 100 years, or the seasonal 6-month-a-year model that we've run it on from since the 1800s. Is that still relevant within a 21st century context, right? Or do we need to crack the code of tourism and finally develop a year-round tourism industry where we could truly get all the benefits and the prosperity that tourism could bring to this nation, and develop an industry that pretty much benefits all? We have to ask ourselves questions like, what exactly are we good at, or what do we want to be known for? We find that we have destinations such as Jamaica, for example. When you look at the World Travel Awards that we just recently held there, they won 3 awards. They were the world's leading destination in 3 areas: the world's leading cruise destination, the world's leading family destination, the world's leading wedding destination. St. Lucia has cornered that market for many, many years, the world's leading honeymoon destination. I asked myself, I know Barbados. Barbados is a phenomenal country. We have a powerful brand. The name Barbados is powerful on the global stage. What is it that we're good at, and what area can we corner the market on that we differentiate ourselves from the rest of the world and be a role model to be benchmarked, emulated, and aspired to? Another area that we need to question ourselves on is, how do we get our high price point to be matched by value for money? We are a very expensive destination. Some are saying we are pricing ourselves out of the market, and people are seeking out other destinations that offer a greater value for money. And if we have a high price point, we have to match that with value for money. And that's an area I think we are not being particularly successful in, and we need to quadruple down on that and put measures in place to make sure that you get what you pay for. Even if we are expensive, what we're doing in terms of our tourism infrastructure, in terms of our service offered, in terms of the diversity and quality of the things to do on the island, have to be worth whatever we are charging. So we have to definitely up our game in that area. How do we increase visitor spend and double or triple our tourism economy? How do we do that? Right now, we are measuring tourism success by arrivals. And that's kind of not the best way to do it, because if we measure tourism success by arrivals, and we take, for example, in 2019, we had the highest arrivals in history, even though we had record arrivals at 1.4 million combined, with 714,000 land-based visitors and 687 cruise passengers, and we combine it, it was 1.4 million. Yet, the tourism earnings for that year was $1.1 billion. Last time That is less than what we earned in 2008. So even though we are patting ourselves on the back for arrivals, let us not judge or measure tourism success by just arrivals. We always also have to measure it by visitor spend and the social and environmental impacts that tourism is having on this country. So if the visitor spend, if it's been making $1 billion on average, that amount of money has stagnated. That is not a good sign for us, especially when we have, I believe it's almost $14 billion in debt, and we are dependent on tourism to bring that foreign exchange. That means we have to be going after the type of high yield, high spending visitor. And we have to take a more targeted and scientific approach to ensuring these people come to our shores to make sure we extract the amount of tourism dollars we're looking for. We also are saying airlift is an issue. And I'm asking, do we have an airlift problem or do we have a demand problem? You see, we have to start curating this industry and taking an approach where we employ critical thinking and peeling back the layers and going in and really looking at the different aspects of this industry and not just the surface aspects. We've had a problem airlift summer. We haven't really had that much. One cruise ship came in for the whole summer season. Is airlift the problem or is demand the problem? Because when I last checked, when there is demand, the ships and the planes follow, right? So instead of focusing on getting more and more planes, let's put that investment and focus on the areas that matter most. Let's get our product right. Let's get our service right. Let's clean up Barbados, right? Let's get our people on board. Let's start to create exciting and diverse things to do on the island to generate excitement and interest in this island again, to take this country to the next level. And then the demand will come and the planes and the boats will follow. So those are just a couple questions I'm asking in order to, well, one more is how do we develop a more inclusive industry that truly benefits all? You know, how do we get a more fair and equitable distribution of the tourist dollar across the board? All of these are things that we need to focus on. And most importantly, what role do we as Barbadians want to see tourism play for us as a people? Do we want to see tourism truly fulfill its potential of being a catalyst for social and economic development, where we could benefit as a region, where it ushers in an era of poverty alleviation, wealth creation, youth and gender empowerment, and creates opportunities for new micro and entrepreneurial opportunities and also new jobs. Tourism has to play its role. We have to harness the omnipotent power of tourism and channel that power where we want it to go for the benefit of this nation. The tourism tail could no longer wag the tourism dog. We have to control it, and we have to ensure that it's a transformational force for good, and the benefits outweigh the costs. All right, that's just a little bit of a food for thought type of session there before I get to the reason why I'm really here. Because I want us to start thinking broadly about tourism and these issues, because our fortunes are attached to the success of the tourism industry. So we have to get it right. We have entered the era of the fierce urgency of now. So we have to get it right, and we have to get it right now. Time is not waiting on us. Our competitors are not waiting on us. So, as I said, my topic was reinventing the tourism industry. And the questions are, what do I mean when I say reinvent the tourism industry? Why do we have to reinvent it? And why did I specifically pull out the 21st century? Seeing that Barbados has been in the business of tourism in the 18th century, the 19th century, the 20th century, and the 21st. Little known fact, Barbados was in tourism from back in the 1700s. Remember, George Washington was our first early, really famous visitor. He came here in 1751. Barbados was a health resort back then. But what I'm saying is, when I mean reinvent, is I mean we need to urgently rethink the industry, reset it, reimagine it, rejuvenate. We need to give the industry the shot at the arm that it needs to make it new again by identifying new models, policies, or initiatives that may no longer serve us as well as they did in the past and changing them for better options. In other words, I mean we need to embrace innovation through the continual development of new products, ideas, and processes, or taking existing products, ideas, and processes and approaching them in new ways. So innovation is an area we've been weak in traditionally, but I believe that innovation is a state of mind. And you don't necessarily need money. I mean, when you look at destinations like Dubai and those, they're innovating, but they have money and they're doing wondrous things out there in those Gulf states. I mean, mind-blowing things that I don't think we have the money to compete with them. But I think innovation is what you don't have in money, you make up for in creativity, and it's about not even thinking outside the box. We got to take it beyond there. There is no box. And that's how we need to go into the future. Now, that's what I mean when I say reinvent. Why do we have to do that? There are several reasons why. And one of them is that Barbados is a mature destination. I just told you we've been in this business for many, many years. It's very mature. And while longevity has its benefits in terms of, we know how to do tourism well, our expertise is sought from other countries around the world. The Barbados model has been benchmarked by many islands in the region. The downside of being a mature and dated destination is it carries the risk of stagnation, of becoming stagnated, especially when complacency is set in. I think Barbados was one of the first pioneers in the region. I think we shot so far ahead for so long that we may have gotten comfortable and started coasting a little bit. Whereas the other islands may be a little bit hungrier, and they would have probably, a lot of them would have borrowed the Barbados model and in some cases perfected it. So we need now to regain, from what I see, our crown. Now, another thing about Barbados, which becoming stagnated or becoming complacent, is that we are being challenged now by unprecedented global competition around the world. There's a too much choice dilemma. There are over 185 countries in the world that offer a tourism proposition. And a lot of these are being very aggressive. They're reinventing themselves on a consistent basis. They're innovating, and they're offering a better product and service at a more cost-effective price than we are. In other words, value for money. And that is what is happening now, particularly in a world where we have an economic crisis and pent-up demand. People are still traveling, but they're going to travel differently. And value for money now is one of the number one areas where destinations who are able to pivot quickly and offer that, they're the ones who are winning this game. Another reason why is that Barbados has a high repeat clientele, both land-based and cruise. And these people obviously are looking for new and exciting things to do. You can't come to Barbados. I mean, I've met a lot of these people. They've come 60 times, 70 times. They're loyalists. They love this country. Barbados is much beloved and sought after. We have one of the highest repeat visitor clienteles in the region, if not the world. So they're coming, but after a while, there's so much competition doing new and wondrous things. You might try somewhere else. And we're dealing with the next generation traveler, the millennials and the Gen Zs. They're having it. They're looking for new, fascinating, one-of-a-kind, unique grand moments. Because you know them live on the phone, them young people, our young people. And they're not as loyal as past generations. So we have to keep moving and pivoting and creating new things to keep people interested and attracted to Barbados. So as a mature destination, we were faced with two things. We either do nothing and go into free fall and decline, or we seek to reconfigure our tourism developmental and business model and rejuvenate the sector in order to ensure that the industry gets a shot in the arm it so desperately needs right now to enhance its competitiveness. So therefore, right now, the choice is clear of what we have to do, and we have to do it, as I said. Now is the key word here. Now, why the 21st century? I told you what I meant when I said reinvent, why we have to do it, why specifically the 21st century? Because we should reinvent. Every business knows in order to remain relevant and competitive, it has to reinvent, rebrand, and reposition itself every couple of years, right? And several of our, like Jamaica, for instance, does that very often. But there's a greater level of urgency in the 21st century for several pertinent reasons. Chief amongst these is the fact that the 21st century has ushered in a new era of unprecedented global volatility, one of the most in modern history, where there are several economic, political, demographic, environmental, technological, and social forces that are converging to set a new framework in which the sector will develop over the coming decades. Now, these changes in the global environment will challenge the way policymakers, leaders, and managers plan for the future of tourism development. Therefore, before we can endeavor to chart a viable course forward for Barbados, we must first have a comprehensive understanding of these changes, challenges, threats, mega drivers, and key trends in order to formulate the appropriate policy and strategic responses to build a competitive, innovative, and resilient tourism sector. Now, that was a mouthful. What I'm saying is there are two things. I'm going to speak to you all today about five, and I'm trying to get past them quickly so we could get to discussions. Tourism has to recover in order for us to get back on track in terms of our economy and our lives and livelihoods. There are two things that are going to derail that process right now globally that we have to be very aware of as Barbadians. Because if we realize that when tourism, it's going to impact our lives negatively, we need to know what is coming, and we need to know how we're going to navigate these treacherous waters. We also need to know what is good that is happening, there are opportunities for us, and how we're going to capitalize on these opportunities. So there are two areas that we have to be very mindful of: the volatility in the world, the climate crisis, which is going to give tourism a very hard time and a knockout punch. And then there are three areas that are currently trending that we need to be aware of so we could capitalize on. And that's sustainability, that's the changing consumer behaviors, and that's the digital economy that's currently disrupting the global tourism industry and will shape it for the foreseeable future. So in terms of the volatility, somebody please time me. You time me? Give me some signals, please. All right. In terms of the volatility, what is happening right now? And you're watching news, right? It's almost like if we, especially coming out of COVID, where we're still in a little bit of shell shock. We have barely come out of COVID, where about 6 knockout punches have been delivered to us simultaneously. Typically, with respect to tourism or with crises, they come around every 5 to 7. Like it was 9/11, as soon as we turned into the 21st century. Then it was about 6, 7 years. It was the Great Recession in 2008. And then it took about 10, 12 years for COVID. In between there, we had a couple of little hiccups like Zika and chikungunya and swine flu and pig flu, but it didn't become a mainstream problem like COVID did. So we dealt with those, even though they still gave the tourism industry a little shake up. We had COVID, which is the worst shock in modern history due to its protracted nature. And global tourism experienced the worst year in history in 2020. Now, volatility is not new, because if we go 100 years ago, none of us, well, hardly of us were alive. Anybody in this room was alive then. We had, our foreparents had to deal between 1914 and 1945 with World War I, the Spanish flu, which was deemed to be the mother of all pandemics, is the mother of COVID, that killed between 25 and 50 million people. Then we had the Great Depression. And then we had World War II. I do not know how our parents dealt with 2 world wars, a COVID, and a Great Depression in a space of 30 years. So there has been volatility before, but the difference is there were only about 1.9 billion people on Earth then, and there are now 8 billion on Earth now. That makes it completely different. So we had COVID. We were barely out of COVID because we were still in COVID, even though we're getting on it, we're out of it. We're still in it. Then we had the geopolitical conflict with Russia and Ukraine, the geopolitical tensions that are still going on with North Korea, South Korea, China, and Taiwan. Every day we have a prospect of World War III being dangled in our face, which is not a very comfortable prospect at all, right? So we have that. We have supply chain disruptions from COVID, the war, and the climate crisis. We have daily natural disasters. Even here in Barbados, we had to deal with COVID, but we had to deal with a freak storm, a hurricane, flash floods, heat waves, droughts, and ash from the volcano. So every day the world is being hit. And if you're looking at the news, it is catastrophic and is actually very terrifying. We have rising energy, fuel, and food prices. We have a triple-demic going on in the States, oil and food shortages, currency fluctuations. And all of this is part of the global cost of living crisis, as well as next year being forecasted to be more devastating as this year, as inflation increases and they said America's going to have a recession in England. So none of these things. Oh, I forgot this one. As much as we're talking external shocks, let's not forget the internal problems, the rise in crime. Now, this is a scourge or blot on the landscape of the region, the most tourism-dependent region in the world. We cannot afford for this crime to get out of hand. And in many cases, it has. And that can derail tourism development. Actually, any of these potential crises that I just spoke to you can. And it's very worrisome. And it's obviously the world has now entered a new normal. And this is with a kind of high levels of uncertainty and instability that are inevitable, unpredictable, and forecasted to increase. And any of these have the potential to severely cripple the economy, the tourism economy, at a very short notice. So even though tourism has exhibited its historic and extraordinary resilience, the point is, how long will this go on for? At some point, we're going to reach economies of scale. People are still traveling because of the pent-up demand, so they're still traveling. But it seems like these problems are going to go on for the foreseeable future. So how long is this going to last? And when is tourism going to stumble? Once again, how do we plan and manage and develop the tourism industry within this vortex of volatility? Now, they said a crisis is a terrible thing to waste, and we learned two valuable lessons during COVID. One was how important or critical tourism is to our economic development, but we've also learned how risky it is for this island to be overly reliant on a singular sector for its economic survival that is as fickle or vulnerable to external shocks as tourism is. And that we need to urgently develop new and innovative revenue models beyond tourism as a protective mechanism to safeguard this nation and its people in the future. So what I'm saying is, I'm talking here economic diversification, because as much as we rely on tourism, and tourism loves stability, once things are stable, tourism will bring home the bacon every time. Volatility is tourism's sworn enemy. Once things are too volatile and the tourism industry stumbles, our economy stumbles and our livelihoods stumble behind it. So even though it has bounced back and the Caribbean is experiencing the greatest rebound of tourism in the entire world, the Caribbean. But the point is, all of this economic crisis, natural disasters, everything is going to threaten tourism industry. And we have to look at diversifying our economy to find other areas besides tourism that will buffer our economy, not if, when tourism stumbles again, because these levels of crisis are going to increase. And it's very worrisome. But if we know it is in our interest to also plan for future crises so that we will not be caught with our pants around our ankles again, because if there's one thing COVID did, it exposed gaps in government and industry preparedness and response capacity. And there needs to be coordinated action across all levels of government and the private sector going forward. And I have some ideas in terms of creating something like a tourism crisis resilient task force, something that would keep their finger on the pulse. They'll be looking at pending crisis. They'll be doing environmental scans so that we'll be prepared and able to mobilize quickly when the next crisis hits. We tend sometimes to be too reactive. And if we are going to exist in this new world order, we have to be a lot more proactive, and we have to see the crisis coming down the road and prepare for it and not wait for it to hit. And we go through what we went through for the last 2 years. So I hope we have a playbook for tourism that we created coming out of COVID. As I said, a crisis is a terrible thing to waste. And I hope we have written down what we need to do when that happens again, so we will not be under, as much pressure as we have been in the last 2 years. The climate crisis. Can you give me a time check? How much? Okay. The climate crisis is one of the biggest threats facing tourism today, is the climate crisis. Maybe we're not really looking, we're seeing these things happening and it may not resonate, because we are getting some bad weather and certain things happening, but not as bad as we're seeing on TV that's happening around the world. Wildfires, droughts, floods of biblical proportions, rising temperatures and droughts and food shortages, etc. But I'm here to tell you today that we are the next on the front line for that level of climate catastrophe. And global emissions are at the highest levels in human history and continue to rise and wreak havoc across all four corners of the world. Right? The Earth's warming and sea level rise are getting worse, with the situation deteriorating at a faster than anticipated pace. And a lot of this happened over the last 20 to 30 years. So in the 21st century, I keep going back to the 21st century. This is what has happened over the last 20 years. That's why the 21st century is probably the most dangerous century in recent memory, because this threat is an existential threat to humankind. Viruses will come and go. They will stick around. We will brace for it, go through a year or two as we realize now it's going to be happening. But this climate crisis is something that is coming, and it is long term, and it has the potential to destroy the world as we know it. At a recently held COP27, which is the Conference of Parties, the biggest climate change conference in the world, the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres issued a very dire warning, stating that we were on a highway to climate hell with our foot on the accelerator. And if we don't do something about it, this is our last decade that we will win or lose the battle against the climate crisis. And if we don't get it done, the impacts will be irreversible and mankind will be doomed. This is why we have to be concerned about what's happening here with the world heating up and the sea levels rising and droughts, etc. The real tragedy about this story is that although the Caribbean only contributes less than 1% of the global greenhouse gases, the region is expected to be amongst the earliest and the most impacted by climate change in the coming decades, at a cost, according to the IDB estimate, of over $22 billion annually by mid-century. And that's a price tag. We can't afford that. We don't even have enough money as it is. And the fact, and also the World Travel and Tourism Council forecasted that the Caribbean will be the most at-risk and dangerous tourism destination between 2025 and 2050. That's a very terrifying prospect for the most tourism-dependent region in the world. Now, this is going to be very challenging because by dint of tourism's very construct, right, climate change is going to destroy the very natural assets that the region depends upon to sustain its economies and the quality of life of its people. Now, I'm not trying to be the bearer of doom and gloom and bad news, but this is something that we need to know about and we need to be aware of so that we can prepare ourselves as a nation and know what we need to do. Not if, when. The impacts of this region will be catastrophic due to the fact that the region's tourism model is primarily based on sand, sea, and sun tourism. So the coastal communities in particular will be severely threatened by direct and indirect impacts of climate change. We're going to see sea level rise and flooding, which will impact coastal tourism through inundation of many coastal and inland land areas. We're going to have some saline intrusion because the sea level rise will get into the groundwater, and it will impact our drinking water and water for our plants and our agricultural sector. There will be disruption to coastal infrastructure like hotels and resorts and coral and marine life. There may be mass population displacement, rising sea levels. Rising sea surface temperatures will cause more hurricanes and storms, ocean acidification, and coral bleaching. Because already our coral is dying. Over 75% of our coral around Barbados is already dead. The severe heat waves and droughts will threaten food and water security and increase the prevalence of disease. The sargassum seaweed on the beach is going to cause a problem, and we will lose our aesthetics, the beauty of the region, because of all of this destruction. Now, this is not going to happen tomorrow, and thank God. Yes, so don't be afraid. We are looking between, even though, like what we're saying, at this level, they're trying to cap the carbon, the global temperature to 1.5. That's why we're trying to cut all the emissions. We're already at 1.1. And the destruction I see at 1.1, I don't even want to see what is going to be at 1.5, right? So we have to be mindful of what is happening. We have to be mindful of the impact it will have on our tourism industry, and we have to seek to, in all of our planning for tourism in the future, we have to build in resilience of how we are going to build greener and more resilient economies and what we're going to do to protect our tourism industry going forward. Because if this is going to be if this is going to be going to have this level of devastation impact on the industry that we depend upon to provide us with the foreign exchange that we need to pay our debts and to pay for what will be destruction. Because, as I said, when you look at the destruction that happened during COVID with respect to the floods and the ashfall and the freak storm, that was money that had to be diverted to build back that infrastructure that is required to pay for our health, for our schools, or other areas. Even though at the COP, the rich companies agreed to give the poorer countries money to build back the infrastructure that was destroyed by climate change. But we don't know how that's going to happen. We have no guarantees. So right now, we still have to be looking out for ourselves and to sail our own boat. So that is something else that is going to also threaten. So it's the volatility and it is the climate change that are the two biggest threats right now to tourism that will derail the tourism recovery, the phenomenal tourism recovery that we're currently experiencing. Now, the area of sustainability, I'm now getting into the area of that we need to capitalize on the opportunities that these areas bring. So on two separate charts, we have to be fortifying our economies and our country and preparing for the volatility, preparing for the climate crisis or the climate change, the effects of climate change, but we still can't throw tourism to the wolves. Tourism is a very important sector. There's a lot of investment in tourism infrastructure. A lot of people are employed. So it's not a matter of just replacing tourism and going and getting on with it. So we have to fortify our industry on one side while we prepare for the negative impacts or the shocks that are going to shake this industry to the core. So sustainability is one of they deem sustainability to be the primary and moral economic imperative of the 21st century. Sustainability came about as during COVID, that long, costly pause. COVID was terrible for jobs and livelihoods, but it was wonderful for planet Earth. Because when we paused and the Earth stood still, a lot of people realized, wait, Mother Earth regenerated. People in China were seeing the stars for the first time in God knows how long, because the amount of smog and thing there. In India, they were seeing the Himalayas for the first time. You know, we were seeing biodiversity coming back. Fish had returned. Life came back to Earth again. And a lot of people realized, oh my God, we are killing this planet. Because by human activity, because by just standing still, the Earth started to heal. So a lot of people came out of COVID seeking to rethink how we develop and manage the tourism industry and seeking to rebuild in a more sustainable manner. There are three areas of sustainability that are being implemented at the global level. At the level of destination or government, at the business level, and the consumer. It is the visitor that's driving this sustainability thrust. Several companies are adopting a more holistic and balanced approach to tourism. Like typically, how we used to run tourism. Well, I don't think we're there yet right now, but we have to get there. A lot of destinations are going there. We just focused on profits, get as much people to come into the country, bridal growth. If it diminish the quality of life of the locals, so be it. If we had to knock down trees and then to build hotels, so be it. We're just thinking profit. We realize that that's not the right way to do it, that we have to take a more balanced approach, where we now put in equal focus on the economy, the society, and the environment, our profit, people, and planet. The three pillars of sustainability, and merging them into a single sustainable and inclusive growth agenda, ensuring that the benefits of tourism outweigh the costs. Now, a lot of countries are taking what I call a quality versus a quantity approach, where I'll give you some examples of a couple of countries around the world. Thailand, for example. Thailand has 10 million residents in Thailand, but in 2019, Thailand welcomed 40 million visitors, right? That puts so much, over the years, they've had to shut down beaches because people just destroyed their environment. The place just congested and noisy and cost of living going up. It was a mess. And they have decided to shift their focus to more high-end travelers rather than a large number of travelers. So people are doing away with mass tourism, where you just want droves of people to come in because they realize that is destructive. You find a country like Amsterdam, they've recently adjusted their marketing strategy from destination promotion to destination management and devised a plan called Perspective 2023. And they're pledging now to attract different visitors, high-end visitors, not mass tourists who just come in and don't spend the money and go back home, to different areas at different times and to put locals first. There's this move to put locals first because they're realizing the locals have been left out of tourism development. And we just were pursuing more and more arrivals. And whether the locals felt, however, the locals were disadvantaged, so be it for that tourism dollar that the locals weren't getting because the trickle-down economics wasn't getting to the locals. So this is an area, it's called a quality versus quantity approach, where you're going after a higher quality of visitor, a higher quality experience, rather than the quantity of seeing how many people I could shove through the door to get. Because what we're doing is you're like pursuing more and more arrivals, but you're not understanding that these people are coming and putting a strain on your scarce resources. You understand? They're coming in, using up all the water, the energy. Our solid waste management systems are under pressure. You understand? And then they go back home. And then we are left. Because Barbados, for example, is a water scarce country. And we don't want to get to a point where there's conflict. In Maui, Hawaii, there's conflict. They're a water scarce country. But what is happening? The locals are being restricted to their water uses. They're being fined heavily if they do non-essential, like watering plants or washing their cars. And the hotels are allowed to use as much water as they want, up to 1,500 liters per room per day. And it's causing severe conflict between the local residents and the tourism sector. We don't want to get to a stage in Barbados where we have to choose between providing water for locals, providing food for locals, or providing it for the tourists. You understand? And based on what is happening with climate change, where droughts are going to make our water more scarce, it's going to make our food supply more scarce. And at some point, so these are issues we have to look at going into the future. So in terms of quality versus quantity, this is a very interesting concept, and I believe Barbados, we need to move in that direction as well. We're looking to enhance the tourism visitor spend and the tourist dollar. That's not going to occur by happenstance. We see more and more people are coming, and the tourism earnings have remained stagnated over the last 10 years. Granted, in 2008, they had a great recession, so we never quite recovered from that. But other islands have, which means we can too. So we now need to take a more targeted and scientific approach to the types of visitors we're bringing here. We need to do some research, and the research tells us that the visitors that are the highest spending, that earn more, spend more, stay longer, are health and wellness visitors and cultural heritage visitors. These are two areas we could do extremely well in Barbados. We're dabbling with it a little bit, but we need to put some more structure around it. Health and wellness, Barbados was the pioneer in health and wellness tourism from back in the 1700s. We do it well. Our story is phenomenal. Would you believe that back in the 1700s, we had such an eminent fraternity of doctors that people used to leave the States and England and come to little Barbados for treatment in the 1700s? So we have a fantastic history, and we need to dust that off and lead with that as a competitive advantage going forward as we seek out that high net worth traveler, high yield traveler that will spend money. So we will ensure that when people are coming in, our tourism dollars, the earnings, which by now we should double or triple, that we just not 10 years from now still making $1 billion a year from tourism. We need to push that up, even though, as I said, there are several factors that will challenge us doing that or threaten that. So anyhow, businesses also are operating more sustainably. People are being encouraged to support or patronize tour operators, hotels, companies, etc., that practice sustainable tourism practices. Even the airline and the cruise ships have made a move towards sustainability. The consumer, this is a consumer-driven phenomena. The consumer is who's driving this. Consumers are actually choosing destinations are companies that are practicing responsible and sustainable business practices. So they are looking to reduce their carbon footprint, to stay in green hotels that are exhibiting green policies, etc., to patronize local businesses. They want to support the local economy, to give back to local communities. So this is a feel-good type of traveler now who wants to, they want to ensure that the only footprint they leave is not a carbon footprint, but one that they leave is the ones they leave in the sand. And they also, as I said, we have to be wary of this, because if the visitor of today and tomorrow is choosing a destination that is behaving in a more responsible way, that are looking to involve the Barbadian people, looking to support the local economy. When I say that, I mean local artisans and artists and farmers, and they want to make sure they leave the world a better place, and they want to change the world by changing the way they travel, so they don't come in and overrun the country and litter all over the place and use up all the water. They want to do things responsibly. We have to also make that shift here in Barbados in terms of our businesses in order to remain relevant and competitive and to attract the right type of visitor to our island, because we haven't really had a very good record. And we do have some companies that are doing that already. And I'll call some names like Cocoa Hill Forest, Walker's Reserve, Peg Farm, Eco Sky Water, Dive Barbados, Blue, Future Trust Center, Local and Co. There are some companies that are going in that direction. And we need now to ensure that they are role models to be benchmarked by other companies and that we also move in this direction. All right, I am going to kind of step on it right now. The other thing, this is my favorite part. One of the things I've been driving tourism for many, many years. Can I remember I wrote something called a white paper about 2008, 2009, about 13 years ago. And I spoke about this new traveler that was driving a new tourism, right? And it was different from any other traveler in history. And they're the ones who are setting the pace for global tourism. And if we don't understand this new traveler, get to know them well, and get to ensure that what they are looking for, we have the type of product for us to remain competitive and for them to, as I said, right now we seem to have stalemated a little bit because the growth and the activity we're seeing in our other Caribbean islands, somehow we're not really seeing that here in Barbados, right? There's a little worrisome to me because there's some islands that, as I said, Barbados is the grand dam. Barbados and pretty much Jamaica is the grand dam of tourism in this region. But Jamaica is still going from strength to strength. Jamaica is the #1 destination in the Caribbean. I expect Barbados to be up there with the best of them. So the fact that that's really not been happening, we have to kind of really start doing some serious research and finding out what this new traveler is looking for. And in some ways we have been doing it, but to me, we take too long to implement. If this information was around for 14 years, we should have been a lot further by now. So the modern day traveler, the person that we're dealing with now, is more sophisticated, more educated, more experienced, more quality conscious and demanding than their predecessors. They have more choices and they're seeking unusual, authentic, unique experiences. This isn't the traveler like this who's want to come, gonna fly and flop on a beach. They still have those, eat burgers and fries. These are people who want to immerse themselves in the communities. They want to get into the DNA of the destination. They want community and cultural immersion. They want exciting, off the beaten path experiences, once in a lifetime. They want to mingle with the locals. And this is now the new type of traveler. They're sightdoers more than sightseers. Remember the old traveler was sitting on a bus and drive around and just take the little island tour? No, they want to get out. They want to learn how to drop a fish cake, how to endorse a cuckoo, how to braid hair, how to walk up, you understand? How to drink rum, and to see how it's made. They want educational and experiential types of activities. They are less satisfied. They're less likely to be satisfied with sand, sea, and sun alone. Now, this is the real important part. I even say they're not coming here for the beach, but they want more than a beach. They might go in the sea, but it's like, what else you got? Before, tourists will come and just lie down on the beach all day long, and I already agree with that, because when you lie down on the beach all day long We can't make the money if you just lying on a beach drinking pina coladas. I gotta get you off that beach. It's called the concentrated demand. Get that pressure off the coastlines. I need to get you up in country. The rural areas where the communities are, where the health and wellness activities are, where the eco activities are, where the built heritage attractions are. We can't make the money. Maybe that's why we're making our money. Everybody on the beach line now. Get them inland. Let our tourist dollars spread across the length and breadth of Barbados. But we can get to that shortly. This is my favorite part. So they are more security concerned. That's why the problem with crime is a real problem. Anytime you talk to people, the true reasons they come to Barbados, not because science and they may come here because of science and sun the first time, but they keep coming again and again and again because of their love affair with the Barbadian people, right? So they come here because of the people who we have not integrated to the point that we should, but that's organic because the tourists find the Barbadians and the Barbadians are welcoming and friendly and they create their own relationships. But we should set up a structure where we create more opportunities for informal interaction between our visitors and Barbadians. But the thing is, they say two things, the people and because they feel safe. I spoke to a young lady who came here to stay at her luxury property the other day, and she told me, Kerry, I feel really safe. She said, I feel safe, more safer in Barbados than when I'm in London. They say Barbados feels like home. That's the ultimate compliment anybody could pay anybody else. You don't live here, but when you come here, it feels like home. That is our oil. That is our goal, right? We don't have natural resources like other countries, but our people are our greatest asset and the way we make people feel. We take it for granted, but it is like gold. These people are likely to travel in families and groups. They expect an experience at a high quality that meet or exceeds their expectations. And the last thing I'm saying, they want an experience that offers value for money. So we can see already some areas where, even though Barbados has been doing a phenomenal job, we may need to improve in a couple areas that the modern day traveler is looking for. They're looking for more than a beach. So just a sun seasonal model, and we are branching out into the other areas of Barbados tourism offering is a problem. They're offering value for money. Barbados is a little bit expensive. Even though if you know where to go, it could be as cost effective or as expensive. But Barbados is generally, we go to the supermarket. I've asked people, sometimes very rich people, say, how do you live? It is quite expensive, even for rich people. So we need to look at that going forward in terms of our competitiveness that affects our competitiveness index. So we need to come up with the types of activities and experiences that these people are passionate about and what they will pay considerable amounts of money on to be able to experience. So as I asked, and I posted the question earlier, the first thing we need to do, right, as we seek to give this visitor what they're looking for, because it's only if we are selling what people want to buy that we remain relevant. If Barbados is selling something that nobody is interested in, they will go somewhere else and get it somewhere else. So we got to do our research. We got to do our focus groups. We can't just be guessing and seeing which way the wind blowing and just doing a seat of the pants thing. We need empirical evidence. We need to be doing our market research and our market intelligence so that we're spot on. So we reassess the current science model, the 6-month-a-year tourism model. As I said, that originated in the 1800s, 1900s. Even though it was always seasonal from the 1800s where people were invited to come during the winter months, the science model came in vogue in the 1920s when Coco Chanel, I don't know if you all know, she was a fashion model or something. She was getting off a boat in the Mediterranean with sunburnt skin. And that picture went all around the world. And you know, the celebrities used to lead, just like now, and the mere mortals followed. People thought that was awesome. So sunburnt skin, because before, sunburnt skin was a representation of poverty and working in the field. So rich people made sure to cover themselves. Pallor or white skin was valued because it showed you were a member of the aristocracy. Sunburnt skin was no. When she did it, it became the rage. Sunburnt skin was now the symbol of going on vacation, etc. The suntan lotion was invented in 1930s. The bikini was invented in 1945. Commercial airlift travel came about in the 1950s which made travel accessible to everyone, and bam, Sansi and stick a fork in it. That was it. It was done, and we never looked back. So even though it worked for us, I think we're at a point now where we have to challenge it. We have to tweak it a little bit, right? And maybe before we never thought we did. It works for us well, or it worked for us, but we now have to challenge the Sansi and Sun model and find a way to make the necessary changes. Now, the reason why I'm saying this and the reason why we have to move from this and come up with a comprehensive diversification strategy and differentiation strategy to show the cultural heritage and other authentic components of the indigenous tourism product and to highlight the unique attributes of Barbados. This is something that the cruise lines, the tour operators, the visitors have been calling for years for Barbados to do. They have told us, you are more than a beach, especially from a Caribbean perspective. There are people who come to the Caribbean, they think it's a homogenous space, meaning been there, done that. Seen one, seen them all. And that always disturbed me because I said, how do we allow that to happen? We are a beautiful array of islands. Everybody has their own history, their own story, their own values, the cuisine. Each island is different. How have we left it that the world thinks that you're seeing one, seen them all, been there, done that? So when we differentiate, we show the attributes that are special of each island. So Barbados needs to find its differentiation components. And when we diversify, we branch out into other areas such as cultural heritage, culinary, health and wellness, community tourism, agro-tourism, eco-tourism, sports tourism to create, but anyhow, I'm going to tell you that in a second. Let me just finish this part and I'll get to that. The reason why it's important that we do this is because even though Sansi and the Sun has served us well over the years, the spark, and I want you all to listen very carefully to this, that actually transforms a destination into something truly remarkable is its ability to express pride in itself and to exhibit great passion about celebrating its local distinctiveness through its culture, its heritage, its landscapes, its food, and its people. I hope we understand that. We could have anything. We could have Sansi and Sun. Everybody has that. That's not unique to Barbados. What makes us special, what makes us remarkable and awesome as a destination is if we have pride in who we are as Barbadians and we are willing to showcase who we are in our entirety to the world with pride. And what is locally distinctive, what makes us Barbados, what makes us special. Now, there's an innovative and revolutionary approach that has to be taken to the future development and management of the industry, where there's a more broad-based integration of all of the relevant stakeholders. Because tourism can't just go on, we're just a group of people making money. It has to be broader based and we could do it. While Sansi and Sun will continue to be an extremely important component of the tourism offering, we can't get rid of that. We have beautiful beaches, people are gonna come for that, let them come. So that is still gonna be important. There is now a pressing need to respond to the market dynamics. This is the new traveler, which is looking for more than a beach by making a concerted effort to tell the story of Barbados in its entirety with pride to the world by prominently showcasing everything that the island has to offer in key niche areas, as I just mentioned to you there, cultural heritage, etc. All of these are just a treasure trove of unique experiences and hidden gems waiting to be discovered. We have only scratched the surface in Barbados's tourism potential. This is where we need to be innovative and creative by building out these new experiences. Now, this approach will redefine and reposition the Barbados brand, create a wider diversity of things to do on the island, instill national pride, spur entrepreneurial activities and opportunities for the average Barbadian, accelerate rural development, generate new business and employment opportunities, strengthen intersectoral linkages through the bolstering of key productive sectors, and stem the leakage of precious foreign exchange. Those are all the benefits we could get if we just branch out and embrace those key areas, right? All those opportunities. Most importantly, it will broaden the base of tourism stakeholders and develop a more inclusive industry that benefits all. In this way, the visitor experience will be dramatically enhanced, which would result in repeat visitation and positive referrals. This is how we will finally achieve that ever elusive goal of developing a year-round tourism industry, which will create overall tourism revenue and visitor spend, and double or even triple the visitor economy. We must let the world know beyond a shadow of a doubt that Barbados is open for business 52 weeks a year. With the creation of an annual calendar of events that we post up a year in front, not coming out like 2 months ahead and saying we holding this big national festival. We are together, the stakeholders are in sync, we on the same page, we ready to roll. A year in front, we posting the calendar event so people can start to plan. Oh my God, I'm going to Barbados in May. This is happening, especially during the trough periods where we're having problems, but it seems like our fellow islands, for some reason, you can get a hotel or room in Antigua in September. I can't understand that. I mean, but they're obviously doing something right. Our annual calendar event through creative domestic and international marketing campaigns, we need to let the visitor know where to find these wonderful new experiences that are involving all our Barbadian people, and we need to furnish our frontline staff and local residents with the relevant product knowledge to direct them there. No, going forward, it simply cannot be Barbados tourism anymore. It must be tourism for Barbados. That's the difference. We do away with Barbados tourism, that don't mean nothing. Tourism must work for the people of this country as opposed to the other way around. And it will only happen if we do it differently. So, okay, I just have one last piece here with the digital revolution. I think I'll just skim over that quickly. This is very important because digital revolution or technology, this is currently disrupting the global tourism industry at a rapid rate and has the potential to shape the future. Now, if there's one thing that came out of COVID was the complete acceleration of the digital economy. We had a lot of new technological advances because of COVID that will last us after. We're talking Zoom, touchless, cashless payments, online purchases and delivery, e-commerce, virtual tours, etc. What was good for us is because we tend to suffer with a little bit of what I call technological inertia, where we weren't too good in that area before COVID. I always say that COVID was horrific and terrible, but there were certain things about COVID that worked. That if COVID didn't happen, we would not have been rested out of our complacency and apathy to get up and do. Because of COVID, Professor Dwayne Devenish told me about this modernization process called innovation by necessity, right? And that's what we had to do. We innovated that's how I know we can innovate. It took the light of COVID to light a fire under us, but we innovated by necessity. And a lot of us got up and implemented a lot of technological advances into our companies. A lot of restaurants, for example, probably never would have done the online purchase in our supermarkets. And they've now realized this is a revenue center, and a lot of them have continued doing it. A lot of chefs who were unemployed because of COVID opened a little side hustle selling food, and we're the recipients because we get some real good high-end food for good local prices, and the side hustle is now the main hustle. So there are a lot of things that would not have happened if COVID didn't thing. So we have to don't get back comfortable and complacent, because the traveler of today is seeking these types of technological advances. Overseas, you're doing augmented reality, artificial intelligence. You're going to hotels now that have robots who bring in room service, robots who are the concierge at the hotel, robots who are cleaning your rooms, and facial recognition, voice recognition. When these people leave their countries and come here, they expect that same level of technology. When we're trying to deal with the next generation traveler, the millennials, you all know the millennials. If they don't ever have to speak to another human being for as long as they live, it will be too soon. They order taxis, their food, clothes, airline tickets, attractions. They do everything with mobile technology. If we don't understand how to work this as a hotel industry or accommodation, a hospitality sector, we're going to lose out, because they would just go to somewhere else that gets it. So we need to be able to do a lot better in this area. We've started the process, and we need to continue to up our game to remain competitive. So I've just scanned on that for 1 second. So just going forward, all of these developments have serious implications for Barbados. We cannot plan for the industry going forward unless we take these rapid changes into consideration, good and the bad ones. We must devise now a well-conceived, actionable, innovative plan on the way forward, highlighting the key priority areas that need to be implemented in the short to medium term to support the sustainable recovery of the sector. We must now plan for tourism holistically, not in silos. It can't be one set of people here planning, another set wasting scarce resources, financial or human. We need now to get together, public, private sector, civil society, non-governmental organizations, and get behind one inspirational vision for tourism on the way forward. That's the only way this is going to work. So we need to take that balanced approach and consider all the potential threats and capitalize on the numerous opportunities to develop an industry that is more nimble, more proactive, more innovative, and more resilient, and one that fulfills its potential of being a catalyst for social and economic transformation that is truly of, for, and by the Barbadian people. We are at a critical crossroads in Barbados, and the measures we put in place today will shape the tourism of tomorrow. And as I said before, and I'll say it again because it's my favorite saying, it simply can no longer be Barbados tourism. It has to be tourism for Barbados. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. Thank
Questions?
you for listening. I will now take your questions. Those in the room, those.
Very good presentation. Ms. Hall, you said something that jumped out at me because I've never read it, I've never heard about it before. Is that Barbados was in the tourism industry more than 100 years ago. Now I want you, I'm going to put what I have and then I sit down, because I know other people want to speak. Can you give me an idea? Because I knew you, when I was in Parliament, I know you had presented the paper. It must be lying somewhere in the ministry. I don't know if that group down there reads.
Shall study. Yes.
Do you have an idea what revenue, since you said that we were promoting health tourism at that time? Never heard about that, really. What was the revenue base that brought in at the time? Do you have an idea about that? Because I know what the revenue from tourism for the country up to 1961. It was only $37 million.
Right.
And of course, it went to about $400 million by 1966. That I do know. So I want you to tell me if you know the revenue base, since we were in this tourism industry so long, if you have any idea what the revenue was. I always feel a certain way about this topic because I worked in the industry for 2 seasons. And I got my first car, albeit not a new one, out of the tourism industry. So I have a feel for it. I knew when the Hilton Hotel was building, and being a laundryman before that time, I went to a number of the hotels in those days, Coral Reef and down at the West Coast and up. So you mentioned Jamaica, which is doing quite well. In fact, Bartley, who is the Minister of Tourism, has said that they have recovered COVID.
Yes.
We are still here struggling.
Record-breaking arrivals in Jamaica, yes.
Now, finally, the comparison between Jamaica and Barbados, Jamaica still has a high crime rate. It still has a high, I'm not promoting Barbados in this regard, because we're struggling, and if we don't do something with the crime rate, we're going to struggle even more.
Right.
But Jamaica has a lot. I travel, do some traveling, and when I go to certain countries, they ask me, what part of Barbados is Jamaica? Or what part of Jamaica is
They
Barbados
do ask you
Jamaica?
that. You're absolutely correct, yes.
The Bahamas, that was questioned.
Yes.
So Jamaica do have a lot going for it, even though it have a high rate. The music and the entertainment and so on has been very promotional. Marcus Garvey, an icon. So it is interesting, and I hope they do read your paper. But I want you to answer the question, what was the revenue base when George Washington around that time came here? And if what beach he lied on?
What beach he went to? He used to drink a lot of rum, I can tell you that. This as an inauguration, he didn't toast with champagne, he toast with Barbados rum, he made sure to carry a couple barrels, have them sent up. He loved it. He never forgot his time here in Barbados. He was only 19, he was a young boy. But okay, let me start with the last one first. Matter of fact, no, let me start with the first one first. And I want to get to the crime thing with Jamaica, how they still make it work, and why Barbados cannot afford it, based on the our land, the scale of our land space, right? Land mass, right? With respect to tourism, when George and those were coming, it was still unofficial. The word tourism, and I use it tongue in cheek when I say tourism, because the word tourism made its first appearance in the Webster's Dictionary in 1811, right? Tourist was seen for the first time, the word tourist, in 1772. So because it's only when I did my PhD, when I started to look at, people used to come to the island and write what you call travel logs. And I started to read those, pieces of documentation that had been written in the 1600s or 1700s. And I realized, even though tourism, the word, was not created as yet, these are touristic activities that these people are doing. So I declared they would call it tourism. So when he came, it was still a very informal sector or industry, because Barbados people came here for the climatic conditions, the year-round sunshine, the even temperature, because like in the Madeira Islands, the temperature was either too cold or too hot. Barbados had the same temperature all along, and that was good for one's health. The quality water, the most important thing was the bracing trade winds, the medicinal properties of the bracing trade winds coming off the Atlantic coast, the eminent fraternity of doctors. And all of those combined to create a real climatic condition that brought about, that restored health. It was restorative. So much so that Barbados was known as a place to go for people with pulmonary diseases or diseases of the lung. George's brother came here for TB. Hey, I like you. You got it. You got it. George brought his brother here, but he was in the latter stages of tuberculosis, so he got here too late. But pulmonary disease is something like COVID. Because COVID is a disease of the lungs. COVID is mash up the lungs. That's why I told the world, come to Barbados. Those who want to restore their health and rehabilitate, this is our opportunity to capitalize, right? So the hospitality sector came about in the 1700s as well, where the first hotels appeared in Bridgetown. And these hotels were owned by Black and mulatto women who were like ex-lovers of the planters. The planters held on to the billion-dollar sugar industry and get them the hospitality industry. And they made a lot of money. And it was the first or the only instance of Black entrepreneurship that was allowed to flourish within a slave society back then. So we only started to get organized in the late 1800s when the sugar industry collapsed. And tourism, like it always does, rose like a phoenix out of the ashes of the sugar industry, like it rises out of the phoenix of the Great Recession or COVID, and it assumed its position in front. So the government was not interested in tourism because the plantocracy were the ones in the legislature. So they were interested in spending all the money to resurrect the sugar industry. So they were not interested. So the private sector is who led the early tourism industry. The first association was in 1911. So I'm going somewhere with this. Even though they were not really keeping records back then, the Barbados Blue Book in 1908 attributed a lot of the prosperity that the island was experiencing to the tourism industry. That's actually written down. They didn't want to admit it, but they had to. And one year was over 100,000 pounds, which back then was a lot of money. And ships were coming in with visitors. And another article said that on that day, over 2,000 pounds was spent from just visitors being on the island. So we started to create in the early 1900s, late 1800s, what was the beginning of what we know today as the tourism industry. So they had 3 phases. From then to the First World War was the first phase of growth. In between, the interwar years, the second phase, and then the post-World War II phase is the phase we're in now. By positive view that after COVID, we got to start a 4th phase. So money was made, but it was not captured. It was captured in the accounts of the country, but not to the stage of what it is now. But they did admit that tourism was keeping the country afloat during those horrific times when the sugar industry crashed. Because the thing is with Barbados, right? And we got to learn some lessons. We are a monocrop culture. It was sugar was rum queen, sugar was king and rum was queen for 300 years. Tourism took about 100 years to overtake sugar as the #1 foreign exchange earner. And we exchanged one monocrop culture, sugar, for a second monocrop culture, tourism. We can't continue doing that. We can't do it now, for sure. We got away with it for 400 years, but we can't get away with it anymore. In terms of the crime, the reason why Jamaica perfected the all-inclusive, because the all-inclusive concept was because of crime for all back in the 70s. So what they did is build these big high walls, 2,000 or 3,000 room hotels, and kept the people behind them. The crime was concentrated in like Kingston, so it was 50 miles to get from Kingston to Mobay and 100 miles to get to Negril. So they could kind of corral off the crime and keep the tourists safe, bust them in and out, keep them behind high walls. And they've succeeded because Jamaica is a violent place, but even though it's one of the most crime-ridden, they've managed to have one of the most successful tourism industries in the world. That's a curious paradox. You gotta be a genius to pull that off. Barbados, we cannot afford that because our land space is too small. We don't do enclave tourism. That's what they do in Jamaica and the Dom Rep. Tourism in Barbados, and why everybody loves Barbados, you could get up out of your little small hotel, saunter up to the front road, jump on the first reggae bus that pass, and you just breezing out with the locals. Going out to the shop, you're in the gas station, the supermarket, you walking through Swan Street. That is what people love. In Barbados, you could get up and mingle with the visitors, immerse yourselves with a true, authentic Barbadian experience. That's why crime, we can't have visitors walking through Swan Street and ducking bullets. Safety is one of the core brand elements of Barbados. It's friendliness, cleanliness, and safety and security. If we lose safety and security, we will lose a lot. That will have a severe impact on the tourism industry that will take a long time to recover for. We gotta nip this in the bud. The whole region is a blot on the landscape, it's a scourge on the whole region. I watch the Caribbean news, every single island. Sometimes every single news thing is just a different island, from Jamaica in the north to Belize in the west to Trinidad in the south. St. Lucia was on the news up to today complaining about it. And there's a sophisticated level of crime that's unprecedented. And if we don't do something about it now, I cannot see us pulling that back. Can't get that Pandora back in the box or the genie back in the bottle. Sorry, someone else? Oh.
I want to leave Jamaica aside because they are an anomaly.
Yes.
But I find that Grenada and Antigua are more comparable with the Barbadian model.
Correct.
So can you put in perspective for us then what it is that they're doing right? Because both of them and others who don't even traditionally have a tourism product, others in the region since COVID having experienced hurricanes worse than ours, natural disasters of other type, like the rest of the world, COVID, they have managed to bounce back in the last 18 months, and we have not. What is it that Grenada and Antigua, and I'm just calling their names, but there are others, what is it that they are doing right that Barbados has not got its finger on that pulse?
Okay, excellent question. I think that's a question that many, many Barbadians have been asking, and it's a phenomenal question. And there's several different components to that. You're right. These islands, right, you've just mentioned, what Barbados has forgotten, they probably didn't even know. Because I have to really, Barbados is one of the most phenomenal places on earth. And we have done, as I said, a good job with tourism. I think we just kind of lost that oomph, the fight, the hunger. Those other islands always had a hunger that we didn't have. We always had a marketing budget that was, back in the day, $100 million. When we kind of ran out, we were spotted another 20. And I think in many ways, we probably threw money at the problem because there was always money there. Those other islands, they get like between 7 and 9 million EC dollars to market their destinations. As I keep saying, what you don't have in money, you're going to make it for in creativity, right? And money isn't everything. If you're not creative, if you cannot tap into the money consumer and come up with a wow campaign or something like that, we kind of spin it up in mud, right? So when you look at the islands, I think a lot of the Caribbean islands spent that long and costly pause, that downtime. You know, rethinking the industry, preparing for the reemergence, coming up with a bold and aggressive approach. A lot of them collaborated and worked with each other. They remained top of mind awareness. They use the technology creatively. And the ones who were able to do that, to use that downtime wisely, they were the ones who, when the floodgates slam back, they were able to shoot out of the gates. Where you find that Barbados, for some reason, was kind of left standing in the gates. So you see them benefiting from this phenomenal rebound where the Caribbean is experiencing the fastest rebound in tourism. And you see islands like Jamaica, Antigua, Anguilla, St. Lucia, etc., getting record-breaking arrivals at a faster than anticipated pace, and somehow the Grand Dam. And I'm not saying that tongue-in-cheek or sarcastically. I mean it because I love Barbados. I believe Barbados is the best destination in the world. I believe we just need to do some things differently, and we can compete with the best of them. Grenada is doing wondrous things. I've been going to Grenada for about 30 years, and I always felt that it was an island with a lot of potential. I said, look, the day Grenada gets act together, it can put Barbados under some pressure. And when I told her that, they laughed at me, the Grenadians, because at that time, they didn't really get in the tourism industry up the street. I've seen Grenada in leaps and bounds over the last couple of years. They did it right. And the thing is about Barbados, right? When you're a new and emerging destination, you could look at another destination and say, all right, they did it wrong, we ain't gonna do that. Or this is right, we gonna do that. And as much as before we used to laugh at these smaller islands, or we would say they may be, I don't want to use the word backward, that's very derogatory. The last laugh is now on us because people are now looking for emerging destinations, new, exciting destinations. Barbados has been in the game for so long, and I say that on one hand, but on the other hand, so has Jamaica. But Jamaica still managed to be innovative, and they move quickly to implement. They're nimble. They have a very charismatic and future-forward leader and thinker. And with tourism right now, if you ain't chop and you're not on the ball and you're not quick off the mark to move quickly on opportunities and be nimble, because the industry changes so frequently, you'll be left behind. And I think with Barbados, I see at Grenada especially doing some innovative things. Grenada, we walk around, we say we're the culinary capital of the region. We said that for years. I see Anguilla's minister saying it the other day. But Grenada actually went and got a certification to be the culinary capital. So they're not just walking around self-proclaiming. You had to now go through certain criteria to be able to qualify. They're doing volunteerism. They're doing experiences with chocolate, with the community. They're doing so many interesting things. They don't have that many hotel rooms, so they're attracting a more high-end type of visitor who wants a nice quaint. Grenada probably was like how Barbados was back in the day before we became kind of really developed. And it's safe, even though they now have a crime problem as well. But I love Grenada. I see why people are loving and discovering Grenada. So you have these new ones like Grenada coming on stream. In between ones like Antigua and St. Lucia. And then you go an old trooper like a Jamaica who just ain't never seen die, and they moving and innovating and reinventing. You know what I mean? Brilliantly and beautifully. So whoever is able to move fastest, swiftest, whoever's to have their finger on the pulse and be able to deliver what the consumer wants, the quickest, and is most resilient and is able to balance all the moving parts of tourism, they're the winners. And it seems that that's what they did in the downtime. So they are now winning, and they're experiencing a lot of growth and success.
I came a little bit late, so I probably missed the most interesting parts. However, let me say that I concur with you, but one of the things I want your opinion on, in terms, I've just come back from Jamaica, and one of the things, I lived there for 2 years, and one of the things that always struck me with Jamaica is it does not matter who you are, what you are, how you are, where their music is concerned, it is played non-stop, morning, noon, and night. And so when you said you cultivate the people, they're already cultivated. You go into their hotels, high-end, because we stayed at Moon Palace. So if you know, and the music was knocking you down from beginning to end, and then you had people come in specially to play the music again, so it's on the mics and so on. How do we go about getting our people to appreciate what is theirs and strumming it out nonstop? It may be a tough question, but
No,
that is
I
not
am
just for you.
chomping on the bit to answer you.
Yeah, because
I just
think
waited for you patiently to finish music.
all
This
of
is an
us-
absolutely phenomenally good question.
yes. And how do you co-op, for want of a better word, the radio stations and the different forms of media to embrace what it is and not just play two stupid songs at Independence, but
Yes.
they speak to me.
Just don't know where to start. Look, you hit the nail on the head there with Jamaica. You know why I love Jamaica? Jamaica is uncompromisingly Jamaican grandmother. You understand? Jamaica, and that is their brand and that's their strength. And that's why everybody wants to go to Jamaica. Everybody wants to be Jamaican. They don't play. You come to Jamaica, this is how we do it. You either fit in or you don't. And remember I said just now, what makes a destination truly remarkable is to have pride in itself and exhibit passion for its local distinctiveness through its people, food, landscapes, culture, and heritage. That's Jamaica. I just described it. That's where you want Barbados to get to. You understand? Jamaica, I went to a Ritz-Carlton one time in Jamaica on business. When I went to breakfast, they were serving ackee and saltfish, festival, wrong provision. They Ritz-Carlton here. Ritz-Carlton is one of the top 5 diamond hotels in the world. And Ritz-Carlton realized if you're going to Jamaica, we better drop it like it hot like the Jamaicans or stay out. They were serving all Jamaica delicacies on the menu. And I'm talking over 10 years ago. They had a jerk pit in the bottom of the garden. In the bar, they were serving red stripe, and the bartender had a TV on with Oliver. And the bartender was explaining to these high-end guests what Oliver was saying. And the people just sort of, really? What does that mean? Well, when he said, you can hear Jamaicans just drop the H and put it on. You know what I mean? So the fellow was trying to explain. And I was in awe. Another hotel I went to, there was Danny Mill cutting coconut and cutting sugar cane or hand out sugar cane, a big coconut water at breakfast. You understand me? In the things it wasn't doing like English orange juice and that crap. It was doing sour sop, peanut punch, real authentic juices and foods and Jamaicans are unapologetically, uncompromisingly Jamaican. They are the proudest people I know. They ain't compromising for nothing or nobody, not even the tourism industry. So when you go to Jamaica, you're doing as the Jamaicans do or stay where you are. You understand? So everywhere you look is an expression of culture. They've started to do now a tourist hub in Kingston where they're doing art and music and as violent as Kingston is, that's now the latest tourist product in Jamaica. This will be going on in Kingston and the people want authenticity. You can't get more real than this. But see, if you're dodging a bullet or two, you can't get more real than that, right? So with Barbados, for years, we served like English breakfast. You know, I think now we're doing a lot better in terms of certain local food, but it took us a lot. To me, Barbados is too slow off the mark. You know what I mean? There's certain things that should have been implemented a long ago, and we just run the mulberry bush, and we can't get it implemented, take too long. I've been missing opportunities because we're taking too long. The thing with Barbados, that's why this move towards the visitor seeking authenticity. And now we're shifting to accommodate this visitor. I'm saying, but it shouldn't be. We should have been 100% uncompromisingly Bajan nonstop from inception. And they appreciate who we are, they come, because that's what separates us. We don't want to be Dubai or London or Morocco or Peru. We want to be Barbados. And I think we just need to find our tribe. There's certain people who are looking for the new luxury, which is the opulence you get in a place like Dubai. But to me, that's a little bit sterile. It depends what you're looking for. At least in Barbados, you have an authentic, wonderful experience with a warm, friendly people, with a rich history and culture, good food. And we need to showcase more and put out there our Barbadian foods. I'm saying a lot, travel writers are now writing about it, etc. But this is how it should have been from the beginning, where we don't hide who we are and we embrace ability visiting and whatnot. So we go get them baked beans and sausage links. This is how you know they want that. You mean you ain't want it? But trust me, visitors want it. And in many ways, because we tend to run the industry based on my personal preference as opposed to that the visitor. It's like, do your research. You may not want to go down there. Visitor is looking for that type of experience because they have been looking for it for over 10 to 15, even 20 years. You understand? So what you said is absolutely true. That is what puts Jamaica head and shoulders. Because people go to Jamaica and love it because it's uncompromisingly, authentically, proudly Jamaica. And you got to love that. You got to respect that country. You want to be part of the actions. Everybody flooding into Jamaica to say they went to Jamaica. How cool is that? You know what I mean? It's a strong brand, a different brand. They with them, don't compromise.
Hi, yes. Good afternoon.
Good
How are you
afternoon.
doing? Just one quick question. Barbados has traditionally in tourism been the small family-owned hotel and offering of products with a few exceptions, of course, of the big name brands like the Marriott's, where you had Sam Lords, Paradise, you had Hilton, and of course, you had Holiday Inn at the time. In recent times, however, we are seeing the push to attract the large resort or the large hotel holdings such as the Marriott's and so on and so forth. How do you think that as to where the industry you would like to see the industry going, if there is a need to attract those larger players, resort type players into the product, or should we continue to focus on those small family-owned quaint hotels that many Europeans are very attracted to?
Boutique hotels.
Boutique hotels, you call them.
Yes.
And or do we keep a blend? And secondly, how if we attract the big resorts, etc., the Hyatts, etc., and so forth? How do we retain control of our brand? Because those persons carry their own marketing and everything, so on.
Well, a couple of things. Is that how the Ritz-Carlton bent into the Jamaican brand? You understand what I mean? You have to have a powerful local brand to begin with. So when they come, the same way Ritz-Carlton, serving ackee and saltfish and festival on the breakfast thing and playing Oliver in the bar. You understand what I mean? When they come in, they understand who they're dealing with straight up. They bend into the brand. If you come in and realize that anything kind of goes and you could, we will be whatever you want us to be, you then could dictate the pace. It's for us to put our stamp on this country. It's a good question because the small hotels was always a part of Barbadian culture and history. The first hotels were small hotels. When we moved out of the town, where the first hotels came, and it moved on to the south and east coast of Barbados. By the way, it was Bathsheba that was the tourism mecca in Barbados, not the west coast. The west coast was deemed to be a mosquito-infested swamp, not fit for hotel development. So for years, nothing happened there. All the action was in Bathsheba, believe it or not, on the south coast. But small hotels that were run by a sole proprietor, high personalized service. The three things back then in the 1800s, my guests came to Barbados was because the accommodations were clean, the food was good, and they've got personalized, excellent service. You see how, more things change and more we're saying, because we want the same thing now when we travel. So from back then, Barbados had kind of coined the whole, in terms of the type of service delivery and everything else. This goes back to my original point. We have to determine, and that's where a plan comes in. What do we want Barbados to be, to look like? What type of tourism are we going after, or how are we going to structure our tourism as we go further into the 21st century? Like you said, I think over 75%, or it used to be 75%, are small, locally owned boutique hotels, which are very popular because they're not that big, but people go, they have their own character, excellent personalized service, people keep going back year after year. Then you have these big, and it depends, because as I said, Barbados needs to find its tribe. We can't be everything to everybody. Like when you go to the Bahamas and stay in, not the Bahamas, I never went there, the Atlantis, and there's like 2,000 rooms and you're walking and there's bare people. And I said to myself, I don't like this hotel. I could be dead in my room and they will find my fossilized corpse 2 weeks from now. I like to know when I go downstairs, they don't see Miss Hall for the day. They send it out somebody, where's Miss Hall? We didn't see her come down. Not that there are thousands of people walking through the casino and all this movement, and they do not know if I'm living or dead because I am one of 3,000 rooms. We have to, what are we going for? What type? Are we going high end? Are we going not necessarily high end where we want rich people that stay in Sandy Lane? High yield, which means as a traveler that wants to spend in the local economy to support local artisans, to go into local markets and farmers markets and spend their money in the Barbados economy with the Barbadian people to make sure their dollar is infused into the local economy in the pockets of the Barbadian people. And, you know, so if we have these lively little small hotels, that is perfect. Or do, because like Wyndham, Sandals Gas by Wyndham is over 400 rooms. So on one hand, it works, especially if we're looking to build, you know, we're looking at the MICE market with the conventions and convention centers, and we had Loyser, Erskine Sandyford. And because we have never cracked the code of that market, it's because we don't have a big convention hotel that could hold 100 people or 500 people. So we have these little kind of conventions in Barbados or conferences. So we need to know who we are, how do we want the world, what image do we want to put out in the world, you know, what type of tourism are we going to offer that will benefit Barbados? As I said, the balanced approach where we get the money, the profitability, the jobs, but the Barbadians' lives are enhanced and we do not destroy economy. So a balanced approach. We have to sit down and determine that, because once we determine that, we will know then where the money will be invested. You understand? We need to do that first. We can't do this city plans all over the place where we think, sit down and come up with an inspirational vision, reset the industry, reassess our priorities, and determine the role we want Barbados to play for Barbados, tourism to play for Barbados and Barbadians. So what you're saying is true. We need a mix because we need rooms. We need to be able to make sure that we can fill these rooms on a year-round basis, because it's not building a hotel and it's only full for 4 months a year or 5 or 6. You understand? So I posit the view that before we go any further, we have to come to, we see some big, tall properties going up on the South Coast there. And some people are very agitated by that, because Barbadians, it was before you could not build a hotel above a coconut tree. So when Barbados see these big monolithic monsters, we're like, wait, I ain't in South Beach. What's going on? And we are uncomfortable with it, because even in South Beach, they don't really have that much. They're more across the road and smaller. But what I'm saying is we need to determine, so we don't be developing tourism willy-nilly, be all over the place. And we need to have our people at the epicenter where the businesses are able to get profit, the government is able to get the tourism revenue and visitor spend, and the Barbadians are able to get their fair share of the visitor economy through a fair and equitable distribution of the tourism dollar. So the plan needs to be able to cover all of these bases, and we need to envision tourism now and tourism 10 years from now and what we want to see for the industry. So we gotta sit down and pull out a Bristol board and a pen, one of their markers, and start planning, right? And it has to be participatory, because I don't believe 10 or 20 people in a room have all the answers for tourism. We need to go back out. The last time we went out with the Barbadian people was when we did the white paper and we did town hall meetings, etc. And Barbadians got some good ideas. We got educated population and use it. You know what I mean? We need to involve them in the process, because tourism is really about people coming across our borders, and they're residents for the time they're here. So we want a fair exchange. We want to give them a great time. They pay their way, but at the same time, they're still using up our waters, and they impose themselves on the lives of the Barbadians. And Barbadians are accustomed to tourism, we get it, but we need to plan what this industry is going to look like in the short, medium, and long term. We just can't go on. And I think those other islands did that, and that's why the plan coming together. You understand? That's my opinion. Please, everybody, this is just my opinion. So I may be wrong. So
This is our last question.
okay.
My question, when you're saying we have to look at what tourism will look like,
Mhm.
we see on this side of the island, where we were hearing about heritage tourism
Mhm.
and the Barbados, the Bridgetown heritage tourism, but yet we're seeing buildings coming down.
Mhm.
We're not seeing a development to help with that product.
Mhm.
But then we're on the West Coast and we're seeing construction happening and blocking your view and stuff like that.
Mhm.
Where are we? It's like if we don't really have a plan. So how are we going forward?
Okay,
What's
good
really
point. And as I said, this is why we need to have discussions with the Barbadian people on tourism and what they would like to see for the industry, because you're right, we have a UNESCO World Heritage Site in Bridgetown. And then we're seeing things with bridge buildings, derelict buildings, buildings being pushed down within a historic designated site, which goes against the principles of a designation. And the West Coast, I think when we started tourism development or hotel development in the West Coast in the 50s, there was no plan. That's why there are hardly any windows to the sea. It's kind of overdeveloped. And we didn't have the level of planning and carrying capacity, et cetera, that we have now. So what we do, we have a West Coast that is completely blocked up, no real windows to the sea. And maybe if we had thought differently, we may have considered like how they do it in Miami Beach and probably built across the road to make sure the sea, we wouldn't have that level of beach erosion, et cetera, or what it would have done that would have had a debilitating impact on the environment or the surrounding communities. So yes, so even though we are still building some hotels, we have to be mindful. Can you realize every time a hotel is going up, the whole community is turn out and like kind of pelt boat? I mean, there seems to be some conflict there. So we don't want a situation to happen where tourism, I think Barbadians understand that tourism is a goose that's laying the golden egg. We also understand that even though it's laying the golden egg, it also has the capacity to foul its own nests if not properly planned, managed, developed, or even controlled. So we have to involve our people more, because by not involving them, I see a situation has occurred where there's a general disconnect. We understand the importance of tourism, but we're disconnected. Some of us are indifferent. In some cases, there's outright resentment towards the industry by some people, particularly coming out of COVID. I said this before and got some licks for it, but I'll say it again. There's some young people who would like us to take tourism out behind the barn and shoot it, because they figure by now we should have developed something. They're more into technology. They think that we should probably have done other things besides tourism by now. Young people are different. They're along a different mindset than probably my generation. But tourism is still our greatest hope. Right now, tourism has been good to Barbados. I do not think we need to do away with tourism. I think we should just do tourism differently. And once we do it differently, we could create an industry that provides us with what we need as a country and as a people. So I don't believe, and I believe we also have to develop other industries to come up alongside tourism to complement and not necessarily compete, so that we make the money for tourism, but other areas, so when tourism falters, if there's a crisis, we have something there to keep us afloat. So all of that too, we have to be thinking about. Because I had some venture capitalists who came here in August, and they pretty much were like, tourism is over in the region. Tourism is done. They said there's too much volatility, and if the Caribbean does not start to diversify, it will die, or it will suffer dire consequences. They were straight, you know what I mean? And they came up with a couple of areas like marine transportation, agriculture, real estate. They came up with a few other areas, and they brought investors to look at the possibilities to move the region forward beyond tourism. During the COVID, Africa did an innovation challenge beyond tourism because their wildlife industry collapsed and it was hardship. So they did a competition and they got a lot of responses from people all over the world and some really good ideas. We could do it too. We could do an innovation challenge beyond tourism and put it out there to Barbadians in the diaspora, Bajans here around the world, I am sure that the answers to tourism are reposed in our people, here and afar. Instead of, the same people all the time doing it, put it out there, broaden the base, and give people an opportunity to have their say on an industry that impacts their lives. Okay. Daddy, you good? Thank you. I want to thank all of you. Thank you for turning out. I was so blessed to see that so many of you came. I feel truly blessed and honored. So thank you. I hope that you enjoyed this as much as I did. And thank you so much for your attention.
What a truly wonderful presentation indeed. Let us give a hand of applause yet again to Dr. Kerry Hall. That is what you consider a fantastic, down-to-earth, thought-provoking, intellectually stimulating man. Dr. Kerry, I love that. I love that. Long live the Democratic Labour Party and a daughter of the party indeed. I want to say good afternoon to everyone. As the party's shadow speaker or chairman of the Working Committee on Tourism, I was tasked with I was given a brief task of thanking Dr. Kerry Hall for coming here this afternoon and speaking to us. I want to begin by recognizing the executive, thanking the President Ronnie for introducing our featured speaker this afternoon, Comrade Steve, our most immediate past president, Comrade Vernon de Pisa. And of course, I have to recognize the presence of Dr. Kerry's father, former cabinet minister for the Democratic Labour Party, the Right Reverend Dr. Rice Hall. The legend that was, the legend that continues to be. Reverend Hall, you spoke at my graduation at the University of the West Indies some 17 years ago. Yes, sir. That would have been in 2005. Your lecture was on the 5 Ps. I can tell you, sir, it has not gone a day in my life that I have never, ever forgot that presentation that you made. I have walked with that presentation. And it gives me great, great pleasure to stand here today as a young man, and thank you for that. Of course, you were speaking to 1,000 people, but I sat there that afternoon and I was convinced I was the only person in that auditorium listening to you. So I thank you for that. And indeed, of course, you would not have recognized the further contribution that you would have been making when you contributed to the birth of Dr. Kerry and you gave her to us. So yet again, on behalf of the party, I want to thank you for that. I want to thank all of you for coming out. All of you online watching the lecture also, the Astor B. Watts lecture. I want to thank Comrade Paul Gibson, who continues to organize these lectures. And of course, next year you can look out for another series of Astor B. Watts lunchtime lectures. I thank all of you. Good afternoon and happy independence to Barbados. Thank you so much.